had always been told stories. Stories of lovers so intertwined with their love they were willing to die for each other. Soldiers who had been driven to insanity by war, but always fought on to defeat evil. People who had exhausted every form of poison, love, suffering, madness. People who lived in worlds where everything is for sale. In comparison, my life felt like a half a smoke, half a kiss, half a love, half a dance. A life that did not live up to expectation. I thought people would listen to me, dance because of me. People who I had never spoken to would be interested in what I had to say. I saw a man and a woman walking up and down the train station. I followed them up and down, tracking them. The way they moved seemed slightly odd, like a film, like their story wasn't quite completed. I sat next to her. I told her about my feeling of half. I told her I'd been speaking to people, asking them for stories. And I tried to imitate. It's almost the end of my session. I'd lingered in the leisure centre long enough, repeating a cycle of sauna, cold, steam, several times. The steam was thickening, clinging to my skin. I could no longer see the floor. I heard the door open. An old voice asked me how I was doing. We'd only spoken a few times before, always something forgettable. I said I'd been in there way too long. I can't think straight. See you next time. I stumbled out of the steam room, dousing myself in cold water, trying to shock my senses back, and headed towards the changing rooms. I took off my swimming trunks. I heard him come in, silent now. I could feel his gaze. I laid a towel on the bench, taking a smaller one out of my locker to dry off my feet. The man only had a thin ring of hair going around his head attached to a ponytail, which was dancing across his shoulders as he took off his swimming trunks, revealing an abundance of scars around his hips and bum. It looked surgical. He made no effort to dry himself and was already reaching into his locker, extracting a set of work trousers. Coated in paint, plaster and dust, they could have stood by themselves. Without underwear, he stepped into them, pulling them up to his hips, at which point he peered into the locker, letting go of his trousers which fell down, revealing himself again. He took out a pair of socks, sat his bare arse onto the bench, put them on, stood up, pulled his trousers back to his hips, looked down at his feet. Noticeably annoyed, they were wet from the communal water on the floor of the changing room. He reached back into his locker, and the trousers fell down again. He sat his bare arse back onto the bench and laced up his boots. He paused when he finished and pulled the trousers up to his hips, almost immediately letting them fall again. As he buttoned up his old raggedy Ralph Lauren shirt, he glanced at me. I realized now I was watching him. He turned slightly to obscure my view, in doing so giving me a much better view of his scarred bum. He once again reached into his locker, letting his trousers fall back down to his ankles. Reaching in for a pot of Sudocrem, he scooped out a palm of thick white cream and started to apply it, much the way one would fill a hole in the wall, to the point where his arse crack was no longer a crack, but a thick white flash between his bum cheeks. Skillfully, he smoothed it down and started to apply it to the scars on his hips and bum. I'd been watching the man with so much focus at this point, I felt a sense of mutual perversion. The feeling of steam-induced paralysis prevented a hasty exit. I arranged my hair in the mirror. I could feel his gaze again over my shoulder,